You ready? Okay. Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Amy. You all probably got lots of emails from me leading up to today, so thank you for wading through those emails. We're joined by lots of people on webinar, which is really great. So we've got a nice virtual space for folks to gather, as well as being together in person today. I'd like to introduce you all to Dr. Katharine Suding, and she is who started the Boulder Apple Tree Project back in 2017. And I'm really grateful that she did, because it's opened up a whole new community for me personally. So I'm going to pass it over to Katie.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for coming. It's amazing. This is our 5th year. And this is amazing how things have grown and how just getting interested in something comes in so many different ways and so many different pathways. And so I'm going to just give a pretty brief overview about the project as a whole, and what we're going to do today, and kind of our kind of priorities and goals, and kind of just sort of graphing out about why are we doing this. Thank you all for coming. So I first want to just introduce some people on the team from CU. You see these people around, and I just want to start saying that it's just amazing kind of convergence of all these just really talented people. So Lisa Corin's in the back, and she is the co-lead of this entire project, and really bringing the whole educational aspect. And I have to say that we're so fortunate to bring her in early, because it's made this project have these dimensions that would never be possible. You heard from Amy. She is a PhD student, but also the project coordinator in the community linked to this team. Deidre is a postdoc on the team. We'll talk about some of the education stuff. Terry's in the back. He'll talk a little bit more about the class and the poster session. Irfan is not here, I don't think. He's doing educational research related to this project. Sam is there, and so Sam will be part of the poster session, and was the TA, but is the TA for 1250, and then John is leading the orchard side of this this project. I also want to just recognize that there's a ton of undergraduate students that have been involved. I just want to call out the current undergrads that have been a real important part of the 2022 team. Okay, so who are we and what are we trying to do together? So we the mission for the Boulder Apple Tree Project, I kind of think about it as threefold. First, to try to think about connecting kind of our current ecology with the past cultural and historic ecology through these just amazing old trees. They don't necessarily have to be apple trees, but there's thinking about a tree 100 years, 150 years old, all that, all of what it has seen, all of those stories as part of the ecology and kind of the place that we live now. And then secondly, trying to preserve those trees for future generations. And so figure out where they are, what their stories are, and then how we can go about preserving them. And then also thinking about how we can use this as a platform to further locally engage research in Boulder, at CU, and just across the region as well through education. So I just want to start a little bit about some history about the apples in Colorado, and I just want to keep this really brief. But when I moved here about 10 years ago now, I was really surprised to see so many old apple trees everywhere. And I actually was born in Colorado. I thought I knew Colorado really well. And I realized that I had no idea about the histories and particularly the history of apples. And so we looking into it a little bit more. it's clear that there are trees here that are the kind of the remnants of the past histories, starting in the turn of the century. And there are apple trees in Colorado and in Boulder that are remnants from old orchards that still persist. For instance, this is a picture of Chautauqua, which was an old orchard. There's also remnants of trees that were planted when people came and built ranches or farms here. They would often bring along apple trees from where they came from, whether it was Germany, whether it was the Midwest, whether it was Scandinavia. And so those trees often were in the front yards of people's new homes. And then there was an orchard kind of industry in Colorado for about, I would say, 20 to 40 years in the turn of the century. And in the 1904 World's Fair, actually Colorado won a medal for one of the best apple varieties at that fair. That pretty quickly changed, but it was clear that it was a good place for good flavored apples. And then lastly, I want to just recognize that it wasn't just settlers from the East in Europe bringing in these apples, but there's a lot of evidence that a lot of Native Americans actually have brought apples and had orchards here even before the Europeans came. And I just want to recognize that as a history of kind of what we're working on as well, and also about the kind of unfortunate history of apples being sometimes symbolic of displacement and land grabbing in this area as well. So when we first started thinking about, okay, there's all these apples, and trying to talk to people about what are they, where do they come from? It was clear that there was a lot of information in the community, but no one had really mapped and figured out the history of these apples. So we thought we would start doing it. And so we started tagging apples. And so this was in 2017. And we have a protocol for measuring the basic characteristics of apples and measure them. And we started just looking for apples and getting recommendations across the community. And this has grown. We found apples all over the place, in the middle of the woods, in people's backyards, and old remnant farms. And the database just grew and grew. And for now, our total this year is that we almost have 1,000 apple trees tagged in Boulder. And the ones that we have been able to look at cultivar identity, that we've found over 40 different cultivars. And that's one thing that makes apples a really special plant, is that there's so many different cultivars from all over, different flavors, different sizes, different shapes. And we're really losing those really fast through the agricultural intensification. So to have 43 different types, at least, I'm sure there's more here, just in Boulder. When we map and we look at these heritage cultivars, we're finding that there's many really interesting varieties that we know are important heirloom varieties across the town and county. But we also are finding, really interestingly, many what we're calling local cultivars. And so these are apple varieties that are matched genetically. So someone took the effort to graft them, plant them in other places. So they must have been special in some way, whether they were good with climate or pests or really good fruit. But these are missing from the USDA's reference database. And so these are likely more local efforts. And these are also what we would consider likely to be the ones that are lost. They're becoming lost, right? We don't even have any records of them at USDA, and these might be the ones that are most important, rare local treasures. And so we have these matches, and that we're concentrating on grafting these and preserving these and as high priorities. We're working with several geneticists and horticulturalists to try to further identify these lost varieties and preserve them. Most of the apples that were planted in the turn of the century have a few years left. So there's estimates that an apple tree can live 100 years, maybe 120 years. We see ones that are certainly living a little longer than that, but we know that we're losing them year after year, and there's no question that they're at the end of their lives. So a couple other things that we're starting to do, thinking about trying to preserve these lost cultivars, and also thinking more about what apple trees do as kind of as services for the larger kind of ecologies in Boulder. Is we're thinking about whether we can work on establishing more orchards with these heirloom cultivars, and also thinking about their other benefits to agriculture around Boulder and in these kind of semi-arid arid environments. If you think about agriculture here, we're thinking about planting the wheat fields that are bare in the winter. We have huge issues of soil erosion, lots of water use, lots of chemical dependence. And so if you think about what an apple orchard could do is perhaps increase biodiversity, increase soil health, increase or maybe lower water and chemical inputs. You'll hear a little bit more about this later from the 1250 students. It's exciting that we are in the planning phase of our first experimental orchard. And so that's an incredible milestone. It's on J Road by Foothills, by the diagonal. And here's an artist rendering of the actual site. It's pretty small. It's in conjunction with the City of Boulder Open Space as a partner. Around 20 to 25 trees. And we're designing this as an experimental learning orchard to involve the community as well as students in research. Our general thought on this, but we have a poster and we really would like people's inputs because we are in the planning stages right now, is that we have 6 of these local rare cultivars that we have grafted, and we're going to plant out here as preservation tools, and also for the community to see these amazing trees. And then we will also look at planting these trees with different understories. And so looking at understories, so planting mixes that benefit soil health, so fixed nitrogen, have deep roots, low water use, other kinds of mixes that benefit pollinator and biodiversity, and then a third mix that adds structural complexity, which is thought to decrease disease and increase pest resistance. And so that's our thought right now, and we're working on doing our initial plantings in the spring. The other thing that will be front and center today is this idea of the Apple Tree Project as a way of exploring the power of place and the importance of Boulder and the trees that are part of the Boulder community, and how this might be a really important way of locally relevant community engaged education. And maybe also thinking about that this might be the way to learn science versus thinking about learning science up in some lab, thinking about something that is not really close to your life, or maybe not as well, not meeting your kind of goals to be civically engaged as well as really interested in science discovery. And so we'll see cases of this for sure today. I just want to say some outcomes right now in this kind of effort to really link students and the community in this research. We've held 4 grafting workshops, and over 120 grafts have been distributed to the community from those efforts. We've conducted 60 historical interviews to get the stories about these trees, and almost 20 community gatherings to get that dialogue and get that information as part of the project. And this is our 3rd CU course. We call it 1250 approaches in research, and we run this as what we call a CURE. So that's course based undergrad research experience, with the real philosophy that if you're going to be interested in science, the first thing you should do is actually experience science, experience that inquiry, that discovery, ask a question that no one else knows, and how interesting it is to figure that out. And then maybe later you can memorize the Krebs cycle. But first, ask that question and say, that's what it takes to do research and be a scientist. And so that's been incredibly successful. And we have gathered a lot of evidence that indeed it is good to do actual authentic research early on as in your scientific training. We've also expanded this project, and we're going region-wide. I anticipate in the next year, we might stop calling ourselves the Boulder Apple Tree Project and start calling ourselves the Rocky Mountain Apple Tree Project. And that's super exciting that we're able to build that capacity. There's 8 different historic orcharding areas in Colorado. And so this Front Range area is just one of many. And so we've been able to expand with a project that's called Apple Arnett. It's led by Lisa Corwin with much of the Apple Tree team. And we are involving 7 partner schools around this area, mostly community colleges. And we also have partners from Front Range, so Laura and Maggie and Paige. So they're here today too. And the idea there is to bring in people across all these different regions. They all have different connections, but there are all these connections with these historic trees throughout the state in different contexts. And think about these CURE courses like 1250, but as CURE lits, so smaller pieces that we can spread more easily around to different institutions and different uses to get more people involved. So just this, for this, just the start, there's been almost 200 students involved in these CURE lits across the region. And also this summer, was a 4-day professional retreat was held as training for instructors to be able to spread this and take this design across the area. So super exciting. So I want to end here just talking about where we're excited to head. Talked about the community teaching orchards. We're going to get one. We're going to get it started. Would love anyone's inputs on how to design that, how to get involved, how to get as many people as possible involved with that effort. We're also hoping this will take a little bit of a longer process, but to get another community teaching orchard by 30th Street Greenhouse by Scott Carpenter Park. That might be a little bit harder, but I think CU needs it. So we're working on that. really trying to do more grafting and more cultivar identification to preserve. We know there's more unique trees in this region that we haven't discovered yet. And then also reach more students across, hopefully, the whole Rocky Mountain region. So today, I think about these days as just amazing ways of bringing everyone together and really celebrating this kind of just amazing what we have found about apple trees, how we have done it, and just this discovery writ large. And so thinking about this is really connecting the researchers, students, and community together, generating ideas, generating discussion, really growing together. What we're going to do is we're going to have kind of two phases of this afternoon together. First, we'll transition and hear about what's being done at CU with student research. And so we'll do that in the context of a student poster session. And I just want to highlight also that one of our partners from Apple RNet is also here with 10 different posters. And so it'll be CU as well as Red Rocks Community College. So that's super exciting too, that it's expanding. And I want to say that if you're not familiar with poster sessions, the research is, shown as, graphs and questions, but the real importance of and the real kind of interest about a poster session is going up and starting discussions, talking about things. What did you learn? What could you help with, right? And just starting that discussion. So ask a lot of questions, right? And just there's a lot of room for conversations there. And so I just really encourage that. Even to start off, what did you find, right? Or why would this be the case? Or I thought from my tree it was like this, but it is not. And so just to say that, I just hope that's just a real nice space for discussion. And then we'll come back and John Bunker will take the stage, and he is our keynote speaker. And I have to say, it is incredible privilege to host John for this symposium. So if anyone knows apples and is kind of the apple person in North America, it would be him. So it's a real privilege to be able to hear his experiences and his take on this, because our project in Boulder, there's similarities and similar projects across the whole United States, right? And so it's a real network in that way too. Okay, so I'm gonna ask Terry now to come explain the history and the kind of the context of the 1250. Right.
Okay, thanks so much. So this semester, this is the fourth time we've had an apple tree focused cure at CU Boulder. So the first year was fall 2019. And since that means every single fall, we have students in our class who take a 4-credit course. They take a lecture course together where they learn about ecology and evolution in the context of apple trees. And then in their lab course, they go out into Boulder and they do research on apple trees. And the research topic has changed a bit over the years. This semester, we really focused on ecosystem services that are provided by apple trees in one site that was near the Chancellor's House in Boulder. It's an unmanaged area with kind of remnant apple trees. So apple trees that have been reflected about kind of the apple trees that were planted in Boulder years ago, potentially. And then another site that's currently managed as an orchard and has newer, younger trees called growing gardens. And so students collected data over 4 different weeks at those 2 sites, and then did their own independent research projects where they analyzed specific types of data that were collected at those 2 sites. So some students focused on insect diversity. A lot of students incorporated information about understories, so the plants in the understory of the apple tree, comparing that to plants that were outside of the apple tree canopy. There was also some research on soil, texture, And then overall thinking about how apple tree characteristics may influence some of these ecosystem spaces. And so each team of students will present their research. They've worked very hard all semester, not just collecting the data in the field, analyzing it in the lab, making graphs in R, so that meant they were coding, they were writing, they were practicing, we spent a lot of time practicing. And so we're all really excited for them to share what they've done this semester. And then we have our partner students from Red Rocks Community College who also did a lot of research this semester on apple trees, and so we'll get to hear from them as well. It'll be really interesting to compare between different institutions, students around, and maybe some other research between the different schools. Okay, so with that, I think we'll head over to the poster session, which is